God's grace and his mercy and his peace are yours in Jesus. I'm sure the disciples really needed to hear that too while they were in the midst of this storm. So I spent a lot of time on the wet side of the mountains in the I-5 corridor in Seattle and Portland. You know, Washington State has the highest percentage of boat ownership in the United States. And so I had a great boat. Although, you know, it's funny, it's great jokes about boats, right? What's the two happiest days in a boat owner's life? It's the day they buy the boat and the day they sell the boat. And then the other one is, what's a boat? It's just a hole in the water you throw money into, you know. Both of those things are not quite true, but almost. But I had a great boat. I had a 16-foot smoker craft. It was an Alaskan, and it was designed for crabbing and salmon fishing. So living in Portland, we'd head over to the coast and go to Nehalem Bay. Nehalem is a little small bay. It's kind of like, I'm kind of Jewish this way. I didn't like the big water. I liked the bay. So I could throw out my crab pots, I could troll for silvers, and then I could go and dig razor clams. Best days ever. They were so good. And every once in a while, fit in 9 holes of golf. But man, I had a guy in the church, and he was a flatlander, and he was from Alabama, upstate Alabama, and had no familiarity with the ocean, with boating or anything. And he heard about, we did a big salmon bake every year. So everybody caught salmon throughout the season and then stored it. And it was all self-provided. We never bought salmon for a big old salmon bake for 400 or 500 people. And crab and clams, all that stuff. It was so cool. And he said, I want to go out in your boat. And it was getting close to the time for the salmon bake and all that. And the weather was not. I said, David, I just can't do this. Finally, he pressed on me so hard, and the weather was iffy. And we got out there, and it was okay, and then up came a squall. And we had put out the pots, crab pots, and we had gone out, and he wanted to go to the ocean. He wanted to see the ocean. I said, David, I don't like going out there. This boat's not made for that. And I did that. And I was so far out, we were probably a mile from the boat launch, and then this squall hit. And I said, Dave, we got to hightail it back. Get back into the bay. And even in the bay, we had to go in and quickly pull up pots. And he was so scared that he was holding on. He was no help at all. I mean, he was in the boat holding on to the gunnels, just white-knuckling this thing. And I said, David, you got to pull up the boat. You got to pull up the pot. So here I am running the boat, pulling up the pot, 3-foot swells. And I was a little scared. I mean, honestly, I was a little scared because I got a 200-pound guy in here that's no help either. And so we finally make our way in. I got the pots all stacked up, crabs all still in them. We're going in, and we have to get to the thing. And this thing is going to smash my boat up against the dock. And I said, David, you got to get out. I'm going to run it up here. You got to grab the dock. Here's the rope. You got to just hang on. I'll jump out. I'll get it. It'll be fine. And so finally, when you pull in, you know, right where the nose of the boat is, you know, you can jump out. It's 2 or 3 feet of water. It's not that big a deal. Where I was, 8 feet of water. And so I had to jump out of this boat and work my way around it, grab the dock, hold it in, crawl back onto the dock. I have to pull him out of the boat and onto the dock. And it was crazy. You're in that. And here's my point of that long, foolish story. It's when the power of nature is going, it's scary. I mean, it's a thing we think that we are in charge of, like we can master it. We are not masters of that. And those were just 3-foot swells. And just in a little small protected bay. And so I'm trying to share that with you to give you an idea of these disciples, because I had been out on the boat and out on the bay 100 times. I knew the water super well, and they did it every day, did it for a living, and were terrified. We're just terrified. And so, just like I was telling you about the trailer, there's a couple things I want to talk about in here. Storms, fear, and hauling that trailer around on the bottom of your boat. So there's 4 things I want to share with you on this. Now, we have a picture, I think. I actually am really proud of Christina because she heard me mention this and found it in the first service and projected it, and I never knew because that screen was off. But this, do you know this archaeological thing? This is a huge archaeological find. It is from the time of the disciples and Jesus. So this is the size of a boat. It's kind of hard to see it. They were about 8 meters long. What does that make them? A little less than 30 feet? 28 feet, something like that. That's a pretty good. And it was about 4 feet on the beam, up the gunnels, about 4 feet. And so it was a substantial boat. It could easily carry the people that, like if there were 13 people in the boat, that was fine. Or if you were fishing, 4 or 5 of you with all your gear and all your stuff. It's really kind of amazing. So they were not insignificant boats for a lake, which is essentially what the Sea of Galilee is, a lake. But they were scared to death. So here's 4 things on this, because it's just a few verses. I hope it blesses you a little bit with some of the things that, as I look through this, I was just thinking of, that's the condition. They're in the situation, and here comes a storm. So look at how it begins. He has just finished speaking at length with parables. He's teaching them. And the disciples are new. The call of the disciples has just happened. They've only seen a little bit of his teaching. They've observed 3 miracles, and so they're still new at this. And so they know some things about Jesus and still haven't quite learned some other things. But Jesus has just been teaching, and then it says this. So how it goes. When evening came, after all this teaching, he said to his disciples, let's go over to the other side. And the way we understand that is it was like directly. Not but just go straight across. So they probably went, okay, and off they went, because they could see the other side. They could see the shore. Leaving the crowd behind, they took him along just as he was in the boat. And I remember reading this, and I go, what does that mean? They took him just as he was. And commentators find this interesting. They'll say, well, he was tired, just as he was. Or he didn't take time to have a meal or clean up or do something like that. He said, let's go, and off they went. That's what some of them say. As I read it, I see something a little bit interesting there. See if you hang with me on this. At church, we tell people to come as you are. Right? We always say that. When I grew up in New York City, and in the East Coast, when you went to church, if you didn't wear a shirt and tie, and if you didn't have a jacket, if you were 16 or older, you were, you didn't get to be in the bowling league anymore. It was, and then I came west, and west is different. It's always been more casual, just always been more casual. And today it's very, very casual. And a lot of that is us saying again and again, please, don't let how you dress or if you've got sleeve tattoos, we don't want that to keep you from coming and experiencing the promises of God and the blessings of God. Right? Come as you are. Please come as you are. And what we often also mean by that, is a little bit richer than that. Because when you're in church, we can kind of put on a face pretty good, right? How's it going? Great. All is well. All is not always well. In fact, I'm hoping that for some of you, that's why you're here. Not because I'm hoping that things are bad, but if they are, a good place to be, I hope. I hope you hear something. Promises of God, the community of people, other people also journeying with Jesus, right? I don't know. Makes sense to me. It's funny, we have a pastor's prayer group, and it is interesting when you put a group of pastors together and you kind of ask them how they are. The biggest bunch of liars you've ever seen in your life. It's like, hey, how's your church doing? Awesome. We are so good. Everything is great, And they just lie. And I'm grateful for our prayer group because we've known each other a good long time now. And John Robinson over at Gate City Christian, I'm going to give him a solid here. He is a kind of our facilitator. Nobody's really the leader, but he's like the facilitator. And without fail, let's say there's 8 of us around the table, we'll share prayer requests and things that are on our heart, and he will say every time, how are you really? And sometimes it gets pretty rich, pretty honest. We're pretty honest with each other. So I want you to know that. But here's the twist on this. They took Jesus just as he was. Here's the other thing. Sometimes we have trouble taking Jesus just as he is. Jesus was tired. Last week he was angry. You remember that? He was mad because people were mad at him for healing a guy on the Sabbath. And other times Jesus is with a leper and he's touching and hugging, and so there are times he's frustrated, times he's sad, times he's joyful, laughing. I mean, Jesus is all of those things, and yet, you know what, too often, I do this too. I mean, I'm guilty of this. When I'm in situations, I try to make Jesus be what I want him to be. I'm gonna kind of shape Jesus. I don't want him to say to me, go and sin no more. Sometimes I want him to just say, there. And other times where he says, take up your cross. Deny yourself. And then others, and I will always be with you. I mean, there's so much. You can't get to the bottom of Jesus. You just can't. I challenge you. You cannot. And so they took Jesus just as he was. This is a big deal. Jesus isn't playing with faces. If you were to go to Jesus and say, how are you doing? He'd tell you. He would tell you. Because he takes us just as we are. You know, C.S. Lewis has a neat comment on this in the Chronicles of Narnia, and you've heard me quote this before, and it's a good one. So if you very quickly, if you don't know the story, Aslan is the Jesus figure in the Chronicles of Narnia, children's stories, and they go to this land, talking animals and all that kind of thing, and Aslan is the Jesus figure, the king, the great king from across the sea. And when they go there, they're talking to these beavers. Please suspend your disbelief. Talking to the beavers, and they say, oh, well, we're just waiting for Aslan to come back. That'll be awesome. Things will be great. And the children are like, he's a lion? Is he safe? And the answer is so good. The beaver says, no way, he's not safe. But he's good. He's really good. And then the next line is important. He's not a tame lion. Like a lion in a zoo who knows that meat's going to show up and who knows when all the zoo lights go off and the people go away, you can crash. You know, I mean, it's not a tame lion. It's not at your beck and call. He's going to do what Jesus does, just as he is. And so I just love this line here, get ready, because Jesus is going to do that in their storm. They get Jesus just as he is. Second thing I want you to see, you've heard all this, you know, you go back a few years. Katrina still rises, you know, the Hurricane Katrina still arises in my mind. We had friends from Seattle who came over, and as we took them all day into Yellowstone Wednesday. We were there 12 hours in Yellowstone, just showed them all the little spots that we like to go to and stuff. And it was really fun. And as we're talking about it, you know, several times you see the caldera, and I tell them, I said, I'm so grateful I live in Idaho. We don't have hurricanes, tornadoes, you know, earthquakes, things like that. I feel so blessed to be here. We don't experience those things that many other parts of the country come. We just have the Yellowstone caldera. And if it goes, we're all toast. And you're right in heaven. Boom, just like that. So it's interesting because for many other places in the country, storms, they deal with a lot of storms. I mean, the horror tragedy that we saw in Texas, horrifying. The loss of life, almost the unpreparedness. You know, in California, we have those wildness, kind of the loss of life and property. And other places deal with this a lot. And we do too. We have our dear friends in Arizona, in Yuma, Pastor Vince Harmon and his wife Tammy. Fascinating story. It actually made the national news, real briefly. His brother, whose name is Tony, he teaches in their school. They have it's much like this, church and school, like Grace, in Yuma. And he actually was a principal and teacher in Tacoma. I knew him long ago in Tacoma for about a decade. So he was with a group of youth and adults, church thing in Colorado. He fell 85 feet. He was the last one in line, fell 85 feet as they were hiking up this mountain. Landed on his back, thankfully, because he was unconscious for minutes. Face up in a pool of water. He had 13 broken ribs, both lungs punctured. They had to fly him out and do an emergency hip replacement. I mean, just all of this stuff. And they said, you may not walk again. He may start school in 3 weeks. This is a miracle that his progress, he's been on their local news, he's been in Phoenix News, and he says this, when he was laying there and he came out of that, I was never alone. I mean, that's amazing. I was never alone. And that's the story here. Storms arise even in the presence of Jesus. A furious squall came up. The waves broke over the boat so that it was nearly swamped. Jesus was in the stern, sleeping on a cushion. Isn't that interesting? They had cushions in the back. They had a chaise lounge. Because it was their workboat, right? So when the fishing's slow, take a nap. Jesus is sleeping. And the question that really is here, because then is this. When the storms arise in our life, where do those storms take you? It's like any tragedy or loss, a death in the family, a cancer diagnosis, you lose your job, your marriage breaks up. When you're going through those crises, where does it take you? And what we're going to constantly proclaim here in the church, in the Christian church, we want it to take us to Christ, not away from Christ. Like I'm ashamed, or I failed, I can't be around Jesus. Or people will sometimes say, where were you, Jesus? And you know, so often it's like this, where are you, Jesus? And it's almost like he's tapping on the shoulder, just turn around. And here he is, always with you, never apart from you. It's our eyesight and our faith that struggles, waxes and wanes. It's us, Jesus, always present, always present. And you know, it is kind of amazing that they turn to him, because we can conclude this. Doesn't God care? When the storms of life hit, doesn't God care? And they take sleeping for either inability, inattention, lack of compassion. And when Jesus wakes up, he changes the whole creation. Here's the third thing. Storms pass and they move on. Jesus never moves on. He's there before the storm. He's there in the storm. And he's longing that we'll turn to him after the storm. Everybody turns to Jesus in the storm. Sorry, that's hyperbolic. Everybody looks for after the storm, still there. Third thing. Isn't this interesting? How am I doing? Oh, good. He got up, rebuked the wind, and said to the waves. Now, if you're reading this, you should go, what? You catch that? Is that weird? He's talking to the trees. You know, we institutionalize people for this, or they live in Oregon. You know, I mean, you know, but he speaks to the waves. He speaks to the wind. Boy, this should make you stop and go, wait a minute, things that make you go, There's a big theological concept here, and I don't want to lose you at all, but this is cool. Creation matters to God. There is an animation, there is a thing about creation. When God says he's going to restore all things, he doesn't say he's just going to restore all people. There'll be a new heavens and a new earth. God is interested in his creation. He put it in our care. We've kind of blown that in a bunch of ways. We're doing pretty good. I remember New York City in the 1960s and 70s. Doing pretty good. But man, sometimes we rape and pillage. It's not great. But God cares about that thing. God is vested in that. It's fascinating. And C.S. Lewis picks up on this in his novels too and so forth. He speaks to the wind. Here's what he's saying to the disciples. Because what he's doing is saying something to disciples. I'm speaking to these as their creator. And if I am the creator of that which has terrified you, do you not think I also care about you? And that I will calm this storm, and that storm will pass, and I will still be here. Jesus speaks peace into our storms. He rebukes our fearfulness, and he disarms our fears. Solomon writes in Ecclesiastes, remember your Creator in the days of your youth, so that when things go haywire, doesn't say that, when things go sideways, you'll know he's still there. You won't forget your praises. Jesus speaks peace. Remember your Creator. Now, I want to lay this on you a little bit, because you might go, oh, that's really great. That's good. How's that happen? You need Jesus speaking to you. You need to be in the Word. And this will come off a little bit like law, because if you're not in the Word and you're hoping for Jesus to speak peace into your storm, how do you think that's going to happen? In the Word. And Jesus will speak peace. Day after day after day, Jesus will speak peace. Peace doesn't always mean it's easy or comfortable. Peace sometimes comes after a long struggle. Well fought, a hard-won peace. But Jesus is the author and is present all along the way when we're in the Word. Now, it sounds like I'm hammering on you a little bit. I don't mean to, because here's the good news. The good news is you have it. You have it. It's not like it's denied to you or it's prevented from you. You have it. And so allow Jesus to speak peace into you day after day after day. Last question. So, as a teacher, I should have done this, Sarah. I should have asked you and Aaron and Christine and Hannah and all the teachers, all our teachers. Oh, Amanda probably has a ton from kindergarten. Do you ever get dumb questions? No, never. They're never dumb questions. Sometimes in high school, when I taught high school, you could say that to a kid. That is a dumb question. Because often you say there's no dumb questions, only the ones you don't ask. Yeah. Sometimes there's really stupid questions because you've explained something 5 times and you're going, stop asking that. Isn't it interesting here? And because this is almost a little sacrilegious and I don't mean it to be. It's almost like Jesus asks a dumb question here. What's the question he asks? He gets up, speaks into the waves, right? How does it go? Let's get the order of it right. Jesus was, teacher, don't you care if we drown? He got up, rebuked the wind, and said to the waves, quiet, be still. The wind died down. It was completely calm. And then he said to his disciples, why are you so afraid? That sounds like a dumb question to me. I mean, if they're there, it's almost like if I'm the disciple, I'm going, really? Did you not see that? Everybody's bailing water. And, Thaddeus got dumped out of the side. We had to fish him out. Really? How do you, But what's Jesus saying? Don't you know me? Don't you know how I am yet? And we don't, do we? Partially. Lord, I believe, strengthen my faith. And so what's interesting is, I think that's the question. He says, don't you know me? Now, if I was a disciple and Jesus says, don't you know me yet? I would say, yeah, but don't you know me? I struggle. It's hard for me. And so thank you, Lord, for being here. Because what Jesus is ultimately saying here, why are you so afraid? Do you still have no faith? And the answer resoundingly is, no, thanks be to God. Jesus is not saying they have no faith. He's getting them to say, yes, we believe. We just don't understand it all yet. So, Lord, please stay. Be who you are. Be our peace. Be the one who speaks into our heart and calms our storms. And may we have ears to hear. To God be the glory. Amen.